Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos Podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist, prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. Back with me on my show today, Jamie Franks, my co-host. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, we are finally at it here. We've had some technical difficulties, folks. The internet must just think it's Friday around here, so here we are.
Or maybe it's because today is 3:20 and it's malfunctioning.
God, it is malfunctioning, but it ends today. Oh God. Folks, listen, we've got a lot to talk about. And it's funny because Jamie and I have probably recorded this podcast 4 times over in the past week and a half since SIG has made their presence on the internet known in a big way. And the internet has done what the internet always does. So, but before we get to that, folks, thank you for being here today. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the show. If you are a ZERT member, thank you for being a ZERT member and continuing to support ZERT and its brand. Love seeing the members renew year over year. Love seeing new members come on board. And love having you listen to the show and watching the videos that we put out over on YouTube. We've got a bunch of videos that are coming out soon for some product reviews. So stay tuned. If you're not following the YouTube channel, please head over there. And we have 2 channels. We have the regular ZERT channel, and then we have the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast. So please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when we drop videos like this, which is after the podcast comes out. And as you guys are always, or hopefully you're all aware, that we drop our podcast every Thursdays on Spotify and Apple, and then it comes out in the video form over on YouTube for as long as YouTube will let us continue to do this. It's a scary time. I've gotten notices over the last 2 weeks about YouTube removing videos that are literally a decade old. Oh, you violated our community rights. We're removing. It's like it's 10 years old. What are you doing? Now, granted, they are videos of full autos being fired, and that is one of YouTube's apparently bad things now. You cannot have a fully automatic weapon being fired on their platform. I've seen a couple other media outlet creator channels, influencers talking about stuff that they've had removed, and they've also talked about how much of it's a shame that Rumble is just not catching on. But
yeah, I've had recently, when I say recently, I mean it's in recent months, I've had when you post a story on Instagram or Facebook, it's visible for 24 hours and then it goes away. It's not like, no, as far as I'm aware, nobody else could see a story that I posted years ago, but I got hit with one of the recent violations I got hit with but for a story that I posted in 2014. So that's been 11 years ago. So it has not been visible for 11 years and 24 hours. But it was a thing I posted about. It was a post about women concealed carrying, and that it was deemed as violating some community standard, and it was retroactive to a post that it's not even visible, or as far as I know, searchable or findable for 11 years. And they put some kind of warning on my account or whatever. But like, I don't really know what that means, but I don't know what's going on, but it is ridiculous. And it happened twice.
Yeah.
I had
Wow.
2 instances of that. And I mean, my accounts are already shadow banned. Like if you want to find me on Instagram, you cannot find me unless you fully type in my full Instagram username. Like it has to be full and correct. Like you can't just search for my name. You can't do like a partial search and it'll pop up in the recommended things. You have to do a full search for my full Instagram screen name, and that's the only way you can find my account. And so,
social media. Yeah, I mean it's a challenge. And I would almost love to go back 10 years and change my profession. I no longer work in the firearm space. Maybe I work in the pet industry, right? I'm selling fucking dog treats to PetSmarts across the USA, and I have an Instagram for it. I would love to see if that gets the kind of traction that some of these other accounts get. And I wonder what that would be like. I am permanently banned from taking an ad on Facebook because I worked for a company and had access to their social media. And this was 2016. And somehow, because we were taking ads there, it screwed my account up, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. But listen, at the end of the day, you know, we're all on here. We all do social media, and we do it at our own risk. Our accounts can be removed. It doesn't matter the size of them. You can appeal stuff or whatever the case may be. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole off of today's subject, but
well, I do remember what the thing was now that I sat here and thought about it for a second. The thing that I got the 11-year retroactive violation for was it was like Moms Demand Action, or like one of those like leftist like anti-gun groups that they had posted a meme or like an image that said it was suggesting that women that are being raped should urinate on themselves, because if you pee yourself while somebody's trying to rape you, that could ruin your libido. And then I posted a thing with like a split screen that had that on one side, and on the other it had a woman with a gun in her hand, and it said maybe you should conceal carry and make your rapist urinate on himself. And the violent, and so that was a thing that I posted in my stories in 2011, and the warning I got said that I was advocating that I had used sexually explicit pictures and was advocating for sexual violence. And it like put a warning on my account.
Absolutely insane. Yeah. Well, like I said, the internet is going to internet all day, every day. And it is a wild place. I would say that the internet today is the equivalent of the Wild West during the Wyatt Earp type era, where it was just, craziness happening, and it was just a wild time with almost lawless. Now, not saying that the internet has its fair share of law and order, if you will, and maybe it's not the best for folks like us in our space, but I got to tell you, man, this morning I did see a post by SIG because it is 320. So it has been 320 day since 2014, I guess. And I broke my hip running to the comments as fast as I could, because it was posted for an hour and there was already over 200 comments, and I had to comment just so I could continue to see it. But it was literally, that we're recording Coffee and Chaos today, but this morning it was Coffee and Comments, and it did not disappoint, I gotta tell you. And what's horrible. Okay, all right. So for anybody who is not aware, Sig Sauer released the SIG P320 back in 2014. It was their, I think it was their first striker fire, if I'm not mistaken. Everything else is,
I think so, but
yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Could be mistaken, but I do think that's correct. Except the only technicality I'll catch you on is that I don't think SIG refers to it as a striker. I think they call it an internal hammer. But
well,
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyway, sure, maybe, but so it was their first, but
it's a
striker fired firearm with anybody else except for SIG. And it took the market by storm then, because it was a modular pistol. It was the first modular pistol where the fire control unit was the serialized firearm that you could remove from the grip module, and you could build different firearms as far as length and grip size for concealability. And I mean, and that was that, right? I mean, there it was. It came out. I had the opportunity to shoot one of the earlier ones. I think it was in 2015 when I got to shoot it down with Kyle from Viking Tactics, because he had moved from Smith & Wesson to SIG, and I was very impressed, and I went back and I bought one immediately.
So SIG does call it a striker-fired handgun, so that means that the person that corrected me on that, it was full of it. So I did just verify that. But yeah, I have a similar, so around, I guess, 2016, they were talking about the military going away from the Beretta as the standard issue handgun, and then they started talking about that the military was, because that was back when the Glock 19X was developed. And the P3, a version of the P320 was developed to meet the military standards, and a couple of other pistols threw their hats in the ring. But it was, the word was getting out that SIG was going to win that contract, and so that's what first made me take a look at it. And then so the
right, but hold on, before we go too deep down that, let me just kind of get this whole thing out there about what we're talking about. So just for anybody that's not listening, so obviously this is when this firearm came out. There have been a couple of issues over the last 11 years since the firearms come out. There was a voluntary recall for
not a recall. Voluntary
upgrade. You're right, not a recall, voluntary upgrade, because it was deemed where it would drop, and if it was dropped on a certain angle, it would go off, and people made their videos about that. But now there have been reports and videos and lawsuits filed over the gun going off on its own in a holster, nobody touching it. Now, that's been happening for years. 2 Fridays ago, SIG put out a 4-slide post on Instagram and Facebook that said the truth about the P320, and it opened, and the words underneath it, and the last slide, it ends today. They went on to talk about all of this stuff that the firearm cannot do, that people have allegedly and reportedly videoed. So that's kind of where we're at now. You and I, and you can, and then jump in and finish your story there. And you and I both own a couple of P320s, and you and I both have had kind of the similar take on this. Is that accurate?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just, what, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this out on the record now, 13 minutes into this. I like SIG. I like the brand SIG, which for me is why this is so disappointing, because I've carried the macro for some time now. I've shot my P3. I carried the P320 appendix for some time now, and I like the brand, and I wish they didn't do what they did, but here we are, and it's gotten a lot of traction. So, like I said, I had my first P320, and then I bought another one, and then, over the years, I have gone back and forth with carrying them and shooting them, but I'm at a crossroads right now. Okay. All right. Are you want to jump in here? Yeah, I know you were telling me a story, and I wanted to get the whole point of what we were talking about today before we went too far down the rabbit hole of that stuff about the military. But go ahead, jump right back in. And
so the military decided to adopt the P320, the M17 version, and M18 versions for military use. That's why it's called the M17, because it was I believe because it was adopted in 2017 for military use. And
do you know why they did two?
Like,
why did they do the M17 and then the M18?
I don't know why, because I mean, it's the M17, or I'm sorry, the M18 is to the M17 kind of what the Glock 19 is to the Glock 17. It's a slightly more compact version. But the Army and the Air Force adopted the M17, and the Navy and the Marine Corps decided to adopt the M18. And no, I don't really know why they did the two different versions and why the military services were split down the middle like that. I mean, everybody had the Beretta, like all four service branches had the same M9. So no, I actually don't know the answer to that. But when the M17s became available for civilian purchase in, I guess it was like in late 2017, one of my friends that's a shooter got one and was constantly posting cool guy shooting videos on Instagram with him shooting it and saying how great it was. And so when I was at home in North Carolina in December of 2018, I bought one as this one. And I mean, if I think if I hold it close enough to the camera, maybe not, maybe I got too much lighting, but mine looks like crap because I have shot this gun a lot in the past 7 years since I've had it. And
nothing upgraded on it, correct?
Nope. So I eventually did, just because I'm a nerd, I eventually did go with the Brower grip module, the 1811 grip module that makes the grip angle more similar to a 1911, and it has the magwell. Other than that, nothing mechanically changed.
Okay.
But as you said at the top, like that was kind of the point of the P320, is that the serialized destructive device is the trigger mechanism, and everything else can be kind of reconfigured like Legos. And so I've only had this. I've had this gun for 7 years. I've only had the grip module for about a year. So for 6 years, I was shooting it, literally as it came out of the box. And I told everybody that asked, and probably several people that didn't ask, that this was the best out of the box handgun I had ever had. Like, it was the best out of the box trigger. The trigger was great. The sights are great. The grit, it came as it came, which is actually like this one, my M18. The magwell has a little bit of a flare to it anyway. So, like that was all, and it came optics ready. It didn't need to be cut for optics. It came optics ready. The sights that come on it are good. The trigger's good. Everything was good. And I loved shooting this gun. And so, obviously I liked the M17 so much that I went out and bought the M18 as well. And then just to fully embrace the P320-ness, I went on the SIG website and built this one. This is a P320X compact. And so I just went on the SIG website and I said, okay, I want that slide and that barrel and that grip and then build again. You build it like you build Legos. The
now, were you able to order it from that website and have it sent, or did you
everything except the trigger? I bought, and all three of mine, if I can get them all up here, they all three do have the military trigger, the M17 FCU, right, fire control unit, that has the manual safety. You can choose to use the manual safety or not, but all three of mine do have the military version of the FCU, and I have really loved this gun and really embraced the platform. And kind of like you said, for many years, gun people get into these kind of discussions all the time where if you just had to pick one gun and you had to run out of your house, the handgun I intended to choose was my old SIG P226 that I've had. I bought my SIG P226 in either 2002 or 2003, and it also, because I'm me, it was the P226 N. It was the Navy version of the P226, but that gun has been phenomenal. Like I could not even guess how many rounds of 9mm I've put through that thing. That's a great gun. It's all like, but way back in the year 2000, like when I worked at the SEAL team, I kind of became a SIG fanboy, which led me to buying that gun. And I've always been a SIG fan. And then when the P320 came out, I shot mine and I loved it to the point that now I have three of them. And
Now, did you carry any of those?
This one, I built it specifically to be a carry gun because this one, as I'm holding it up right now, I realize it kind of looks big, but this one is
15 round mag, right?
Yes, and it's a little. The footprint of this gun is actually a little smaller than a Glock 19. So
yeah, just a little bit.
Yep. So it's not big. It kind of looks big as I hold it up.
Yeah, and when I got that P320, I had spent the majority of my time up until that point shooting and training with my M&P, my first M&P. And then I got that and I started taking that to the range. I definitely never felt like I shot it enough or as well as my M&P. And even over the last few years, like I've gone kind of back and forth on the 320 and I went over to the Glock and put some time on the Glock platform for a little bit. But I've told this story before in regular videos and on the podcast. Last year, when I had a problem with my macro up at SIG for a class, my backup gun for that was the P320. And I mean, I carried that thing all day in my appendix holster and ran drills, and it ran flawlessly. And now here's where we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this, because you and I have both said, great, I've got one, you've got one, they ran flawlessly, we've never had an issue. But I am a sample of one, you're a sample of one.
3. Yeah.
Well, 3, right. Yes, you're right. 3. And I guess I should say that I'm a sample of 3 because I have 3 also. All 3 of those, right? It's not so much the firearm will only go off if you're wearing it or you're using it in training. Mine should be going off in my safe at any minute of the day, every day, all day, 365 days a year, right? Like, that's what the claim is, that it can go off anytime, anywhere, as long as it's in a holster and you can't actually pull the trigger, right? That's what they're out there claiming, and there are videos showing. And while I love the brand and while I love my macro, I have decided to remove the feeding device and the round from the P320s in my safe. I think you said it a couple of times. You know, you said if it's what'd you say? If it's a ticking time bomb today.
Well, so yeah, I mean, like, to move the timeline forward a little bit. So, you know, I got my first P320 in December of 2018. Somewhere around 2021, I think it was, is when I first started hearing reports of the guns. Like you said, to begin with, it was if they're dropped at a certain angle, because the back plate on the slide, if it dropped at this exact like 30-degree angle or whatever it is, and it hit flat, it would go off. I started hearing that, and then, like you said, that was supposedly corrected, but then I did start hearing about guns that were just mysteriously going off.
Yeah.
And when I first heard about that, it did seem to me that the people that were making the reports of this, number one, their stories seemed kind of questionable to me, but also it seemed like these were people that were like shooting like hand loaded ammunition, because like it was some competition shooters that were saying this. Right. So that's like hand reloaded ammunition, and, you know, guns that were possibly questionably modified and stuff like that. And so I still didn't really care all that much, because I only shoot factory new ammo, and my guns are all like basically factory out of the gun boxes. My guns are factory out of the box guns.
Right.
My guns are unmodified, and I shoot new. So I still didn't worry too much about it. And then I started hearing about police like issued duty guns and military issued duty guns in issued duty holsters with duty ammo just going off. And then that's when I started to kind of pull back a little bit and go, hang on a second, this is something maybe I need to take a look at. And then so it eventually got to, I can't remember the question you just asked me a minute ago, but it eventually did get to the point where Oh, so yeah, like if this gun, SIG posted their thing that they posted 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and we're going to go into it, but I just don't understand why they took the stance that they took. So them making this big inflammatory post, that didn't suddenly make this gun worse. I remember your question now. If this gun is a ticking time bomb, it already was, and it still is. So SIG's Facebook and Instagram posts don't make that worse, but what it did make is, because I had always kind of been a SIG fan, and I do typically tend to be a brand loyal person. If I get any product, like in scuba diving, in my vehicles, guns, whatever,
of course,
if I buy something from a company and it works well and does what I want it to do, and I'll be a brand loyal person, and I always kind of have been to SIG. But SIG's post that they made me think that, because I researched it and found out, according to what I was able to find, there's been 2.5 million P320s produced, 420,000 of which went to the U.S. military. So that means roughly a third went to the U.S. military, and the 2/3 are out there in civilian and law enforcement hands. But if I put this gun in my holster and it goes off without me touching it, without me doing anything, the gun just goes off and puts a hole in my leg. What SIG's post did change for me is basically it kind of signals to me that they're going to accuse me of being a liar. They're going to accuse me of being negligent with my firearm, and they're going to challenge me to a lawyer contest, which they're probably going to win, because I can't afford, I don't have as deep a pockets as SIG to be able to afford a legal team like I'm sure they have on retainer. So that's what changed for me. Obviously, whatever they post on social media is not going to change the guns.
Right.
But good now point. I feel like, as a customer, SIG doesn't have my back. And if they've produced 2.5 million P320s, and if this was literally a 1 in a million occurrence, that means there would have been problems with 2.5 guns, right? But you can find it. It doesn't take a very deep Google search to find videos of police officers with the gun in their holster. They're not touching it. They're not running. They're not moving around, and there are videos of these guns just going off, and it's not just 1 out of a million. So I don't know. I guess nobody but SIG knows the true number, but it's definitely more than 1 in a million. And the analogy I made to somebody, that one of my other friends that has one that doesn't really come down on the same side of this that I do, he is of the, well, mine's fine, so there's not a problem.
Right. And yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, my answer to that is, if I drove a Toyota Camry and all of a sudden Toyota Camrys around the country just started exploding, me saying, well, mine hasn't exploded yet, so there's not a problem, I don't think that would be an acceptable answer or stance. So.
Right. So SIG comes out with a post, and that was a very good point. Like what the social media, Instagram world said about this firearm doesn't make it more volatile. And I think that was a great point to make. And also what you said about where the way that they posted it and the way that they worded it in that first post is where I have a problem with it. The fact that they had to do this, or that they didn't have to do this, that they did this, is a problem. Like, I guarantee you can look at their Instagram prior to 2 weeks ago from tomorrow, or 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago tomorrow. And anything that they posted about the P320 did not get the kind of comments that anything that they post today and since that Friday is getting, right? So in that post, they start off with a bold underlined statement: the SIG P320, or the P320, cannot under any circumstance discharge without a trigger pull. That is a fact. Okay, if that's a fact, how do you explain the videos that are, and I'm not talking like, and I think I asked you this at one point. I said, okay, because you said there was a guy that was sitting there, he was being videotaped, and then all of a sudden this gun went off. I said, okay, so they just magically did this. The videos that are on the internet are like security footage in a lobby of a police department or a parking garage where everyone's just around, and then boom, it goes off. So they go on to talk about the allegations of the P320 are nothing more than individuals seeking to profit or avoid personal responsibility. Bold statement, guys.
Well,
bold statement.
And anybody that says otherwise is part of the anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment mob that's just trying to discredit firearms in general or something. But
and so now what I feel like is if somebody at SIG is going to, maybe somebody at SIG is going to watch this, and then they're going to see me say, oh, well, I'm not carrying my P320 and putting it away. Are you going to label me an anti-gun person because I don't want to carry that firearm anymore right now? And here's the other thing. Like I said, I carry a 365 macro. There's no issues with that firearm. And I decided to not carry that right now, not because I'm worried about that being a problem, but because I don't want to have to explain to somebody or get into a verbal back and forth banter when they're like, oh, what are you carrying? Or a macro. And they're like, nah, he's going to blow up in your pants. It's just like, okay, guy, whatever, So that's my big problem with this is the way that they put this out there for people to, and I think I even posted, oh yeah, look at that. Here's my post my comment on their post. And my comment was simply, this can't be the way they hoped this would go.
No. So I agree with you 100%. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. And like part of me wants to think that some social media marketing genius realized that by doing this, they could get 6 years worth of social media engagement in 6 days, and they probably did in terms of how many clicks and shares and likes and comments that they got. I guarantee you, they probably got 6 years worth within 6 days. But the number one, like, one of my favorite expressions ever is, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Yeah. Like for them to take such a hard stance with no ambiguity, no wiggle room, no gray area to say that this gun cannot go off without a person placing their finger on the trigger and applying pressure, period.
Right.
When to be that unequivocal about it, again, you don't have to Google search that deep to at least find. There's one video that I think it was the Firearms blog did where they have 3 P320s. One of them was brand new. One of them had been fired a little bit, and one of them had been fired a lot. And they drop them, and they got them to go off repeatably by dropping them. Now, there's the other video of Garand Thumb dropping it, and it doesn't go off.
Right.
There's a video of a guy putting his P320. Let me see if I can pull this off, like on the edge of a workbench like this. Yeah. And then just tapping it with a rubber mallet, and it goes off, and he's able to do that over and over and over again. And there's been documentation that has come out from the United States Army that says they were able to repeat the gut. So that my point is, like, SIG took this really hard, no wiggle room, black and white stance that this is not true and it cannot happen when there are many videos and sources and credible sources that I feel like are credible enough that they can't be ignored. That disproves like SIG's little statement there.
Yeah. And not to mention they had a voluntary upgrade.
Not a recall. Don't call it a recall.
Right. But then, in the third slide, the first slide is just a picture with their "it ends today," or no, the truth about the P320. And then in their third slide, it says, furthermore, lawsuits claiming that the P320 is capable of firing without the trigger being pulled have been dismissed in courtrooms around the country. Hold up, stop. Let's highlight that for 1 second, because another quick Google search will sit there and show you that that is not true at all. I mean, one person in Georgia in Philadelphia was awarded $11 million. And another person found SIG liable, awarding him $2.35 million in Georgia. So how is that even accurate to say? Like, to me, that's like a politician making a statement on video and then a year later him saying no, or him or her saying no, I didn't say that. And I just want to literally slap the phone in their face and be like, you did say it. Look, you did say it. So
it definitely sounds like a her.
Oh, okay. My God, choking. In addition, multiple plaintiffs, so-called experts, have conceded it's not possible. Okay, so we're just going to ignore those two.
Yeah.
But again, you come down to the last slide. The rhetoric is high, and we can no longer stay silent while lawsuits run their courses. You should have. You should have stayed silent.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God, be silent now. But, and we're going to get to what they're doing today in a minute, but that's a bad look. And from right there, and then jump in, from right there, I was like, dude, stop. And I just kind of wanted to be like, ooh, close my eyes, not witness it anymore, because it's ugly.
So like when I went through SEAL training, the BUDS instructors, they had a saying that like 10% of you are going to make it all the way through this training, no matter how bad we make it. 10% of you are not going to make it through this training, no matter how easy we make it. But the other 80% is up for grabs. And that's where I think SIG, for whatever their reasoning or motivation was behind this post, I really think that's the accidentally what ended up happening, because I think there are a number of people like the guy that I'm friends with that's like, well, my gun hasn't had a problem, so there's not a problem. Like, that's number one, that's like a straw man argument. But obviously there's like the percentage of people that are just blind SIG fanboys for whatever reason, I guess, because people don't want to admit that they wasted $500 of their money on a subpar, possibly flawed product, and so it's just their pride or ego that doesn't want to let them question the man. But I think that 80%, using my analogy, that 80% that's up for grabs, I have a hard time believing they won anybody over to their side with their statement. I think that 80% up for grabs, like me and you, I definitely fell away from SIG, not towards SIG, because like I said, my gun already was whatever it was, whether I'm going to have this gun for 100 years and never have a problem, or whether I'm going to chamber around and it's going to go off tomorrow. Whatever is going to happen with that gun is already what it was. But it signals to me that, as a consumer of their product and a user of their product, if something does happen, they're not going to stand behind it. And so, like, I decided as a firearms instructor, like, I mean, there's plenty of photos and videos and stuff of me out there using my all three of these guns in my classes, and I have gone and taken other people's classes and used these guns, and I think I shot one competition with my M17 just because. But as a firearms instructor, I have I'm taking the stance as of now. Again, that's what their post changed for me, is as of now, I don't think I can in good conscience, I can't have this gun in my holster in front of a class that I'm teaching, because that could potentially create a huge liability for me that SIG is basically publicly saying they're not going to back me up on it.
Well,
and they are going to write it off as my negligence and my problem and my gun mishandling. And I even saw, I try not to engage with people like this, but I've even seen people in the comment section of SIG's post, and like one guy, I clicked on his profile, and his profile indicated that he's some sort of like that he's a doctor or something, but he's like, well, we all know that law enforcement and military people aren't the brightest people, so it's probably just a result of what did he call it? Some I think he called it like mishold or improper reholstering. That's what he said. So military and law enforcement people aren't the brightest, and so this is probably just a result of improper reholstering. And it's like, I don't even know what that is. It's like I take gun, stick gun in holster, and now gun is in holster. Like, how can you? What's improper reholstering? Number one. Number two, like, if that was the problem, that would be happening with every gun, and that does not seem to be the case.
Right. So let me just go back to the one thing that you said, you know, like where SIG's they're not going to, or they're going to dismiss you or whatnot. I mean, they don't really have the power to dismiss you from filing a lawsuit. And, you know, I mean, a lot of these, you know, these situations where this goes off and it injures somebody, you're going to get a lawyer to take that basically on the fact that they're going to go after them for, you know, $4 or $5 million, and that lawyer gets a third of whatever you win. My issue is with obviously them making the post. Like I said, they didn't need to make the post, and then they make this post and they basically are like, nah, it's not us, it's you. By the way, you're anti-gun. And then like they end the statement, the original statement, with industry take notice. What's happening today to SIG with the anti-gun mob and their lawfare tactics will happen tomorrow to another firearms manufacturer, and then another. Today for SIG it ends. That entire statement makes no sense, and I feel dumber for reading it, and I feel dumber for reading it again. What does the firearms industry have to do with this situation? Like, let's just look at another firearm manufacturer, and we don't have to say Glock. We can talk about any others.
Yeah.
And who is the anti-gun mob? Like, you're calling these people who supported your brand anti-gun now, and that's a very, very slippery slope to venture down, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, because like not to repeat myself, but to take such a hard stance where there's no misinterpretation, there's no room for any other interpretation, there's no gray area, for them to take such a hard stance. I've seen, and I looked this up, I've seen 3 police departments that had a contract with SIG and were issuing the P320 as their duty firearm. I've seen 3 police departments that have canceled their contract or whatever, and I don't know how. I'm not familiar with like how contract agreements work or whatever, but I did find news articles that like 3 police departments in the United States have canceled their contract with the P320 and have mandated that their officers stop carrying the P320. And then again, you know, talking about a sample size of 2, where here we are, where, you know, 2 out of 2 of us are absolutely not part of any anti-gun mob.
Right.
But you're taking police departments that had enough faith in you to sign contracts, and now you're painting them with this anti-gun brush, and 2 guys like me and you that would have been probably loyal SIG customers for the foreseeable future, and turning us in a different direction.
So, right. It just makes me not want to. I'm not going to sit here and I don't think any of this has been bashing the brand SIG. I'm not. I'm just going to be clear about that. I'm not really bashing the brand SIG. I hope that they come out of this okay. I really do. I don't know if they will. I don't know if they'll survive this. Will you find me going to buy another SIG P320? Probably not. I was going to buy the SIG P365 fuse, but I don't know if I would do that right now either. Yeah. Like I said, you know, the 365 macro is not on the chopping block for people. They're not bashing it.
Yeah.
But they're bashing it because it is a SIG brand.
Yep, so that's a good point. And I am a gun guy. I'm a gun nerd, and I really want to like this gun because in terms of performance,
right.
And I'm not trying to be a FUD, but in terms of performance, my gun has been freaking great, and I
Right.
want to love it, and I want to trust it. And buying a SIG MCX rifle has been high on my list of my gun to-do list, my gun buying wish list. A SIG MCX has been really high on that list for the last couple of years. But again, now I'm I don't know.
Right.
I told you this the other day. I wish I had a crystal ball where I could just jump 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead and
see
see
where they come out.
how this shakes out, because this could go. This could be a Bud Light situation. And people now kind of use that as a joke or whatever. But the Bud Light boycott really altered the course of a really major American company.
I would ask that same, do you think Bud Light is, so Bud Light's out of the spotlight, right? it's not being talked about anymore.
It's not being talked about anymore, but their business has not rebounded.
Oh, it has not. Okay.
No. But nobody's talking about it anymore.
Right. I don't follow Bud Light and their social media. I'd be curious to see if you go to their social media, they're still getting shit on every post. With SIG, this is way too fresh. And like I said, there is not a day that goes by that they do not post that post does not receive the engagement like you're talking about, with people shitting on it. It doesn't matter. They can post a picture of a fucking t-shirt and the people in the comments are going to be like, can I use it as a blood rag to stop it when my gun goes off? And here's the other part of it. All of the people in the comments, there may be 1% of them that own a P320. Everybody else, do you think that the majority of the people in that comment own them, or they're just there for the comments to shit on?
I don't know. That's a good question, honestly. I just, again, this is maybe this is that thing where the guy who's super into football thinks everybody's into football, but I don't know. I mean, I was driven into the comment section because I owned not one but 3 of them. So I mean, my assumption would be that definitely, I would assume more than 1% of the people in the comments have skin in the game and have a P320 with 2.5 million of them out there. But I don't know. That's a good point.
But think about the numbers. 1%. If there are 2,000 comments on some of these things, 1% of that, you talk, well, maybe more than 1%, maybe 10%. I'm not too sure. I guess it would really depend. But I would say, let me rephrase it a better way. I would say that the majority of the people in the comments do not own or have never owned a P320, and they are there to just stoke the fire of shit talking.
Yeah. And I had a friend that owned it wasn't a firearms company, but it was a company, within the firearms industry, in the firearms sphere. And he was the owner of the company, but he also did all the social media himself. And he told me one time that there was anytime he would post stuff on social media and people would be like, I'm never ordering from this company ever again. And so he was just out of curiosity, he started whenever anybody would say that, he would click on their profile and figure out what their name actually was and what city they're in. And he would type, Bob Davis from Charleston, South Carolina. And he said that 100% of people that would post that kind of stuff on his social media had never ordered anything from the company ever in history. And so that is a good point. So
yeah. Now, so a week goes by and SIG decides to drop The Truth Continues, another post about a case dismissed in Puerto Rico from a police officer. And it's just right off the bat, as soon as the first thing, case dismissed, police officer admits, you didn't even have to get past admits. And the entire internet's yep, dude was paid off, was paid to shut up because this looks bad.
He got a check and an NDA.
Right. Exactly. That's it. Because, I would love to just find out if anybody's asked the question, okay, what about the lawsuits that we can all clearly pull up on the internet? What are you guys doing about that? And that brings us to today, right? Today, SIG posts, well, no, it was actually yesterday. They post another bunch of P320 parts talking about so many options to make the P320 match your style. And I mean,
does it come with a tourniquet?
Right. That's what it all was. And then today is P320 day. And the hilarious piece of that is they know what they're doing now. They have to, because they posted happy P320 day. We'll see you in the comments. Like, well, they know, yeah, right now, yeah, they're going to just start using it.
But okay, but I still don't think that's an adequate explanation because they posted the original post that lit social media on fire, 13 days ago. Then a couple of days and like you and I talked, and like I fully expected that like the weekend would go by and on Monday that post was just going to quietly disappear, but it didn't.
No.
As you said, they doubled down on it. Then they created an entire website about it. So then they're tripling down on it. But now it's like they're trolling themselves with the, like you just said, with the see you in the comments kind of thing. But like that's funny and I can laugh at it, but that still doesn't really make me feel good about it.
No, not at all. I mean, I'd be really curious to know what SIG's Instagram followers number was 2 Fridays ago compared to what it is now. Here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and speculate that it's probably gone up.
That would also be my guess. I wish you're right. I wish there was a way to find that. And I'm sure somebody can. I can't. I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, it's just, like I said, and for me, I wanted to make it, and I made a video about it, a short little video when it all happened, to put out on YouTube, because for me, it's disappointment. I'm disappointed in the brand, not for
100%. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. But, not for the firearm having the issue that it potentially and allegedly has, right? Because I can't speak to it. But because they did this, because they came out and they didn't draw a line in the sand. They drew it in wet concrete and waited for it to dry. And they not only waited for it to dry, they made sure that it dried quickly, because there was no going back from what they were saying.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, I unloaded my P320 and I took it out of the holster, and I am not going to carry it. Is it more likely to go off now than it was a year ago when I was carrying it? No, I don't know that, right? Like, with them making this stance about there is no way that it can happen, they're saying that there is no problem.
Right.
While we all know that there is, because we can see it with our own 2 eyes.
Could be a big problem, could be a small problem, but there absolutely is a problem. Yeah.
Right. And I won't, if SIG comes out tomorrow and says, listen, we fucked up, guys. We're wrong. We were wrong. There is a problem. We identified it. Here's how we can fix it. Here's what will fix it. If you have a fire control unit with this serial number, after this, you have no problem. If it's before this, if they came out and said that, and I looked and said, oh, mine's good, I'd 1000% go back to carrying it appendix.
You are on fire right now, because you are so right.
Right.
The big difference that they have affected, and I hate to say this, because this is a stance often associated with the left, I guess, but what they've done is like, I love this gun and I want to love this gun and I want to trust this gun, but with this stance that they've made, what they've really changed is now I'm gonna, this is a feelings-based thing, but now I'm gonna feel like an idiot carrying this gun. They have made me like, whereas before, you're like what you just said, I would have rather seen them walk that post back, or if not that, I would rather have seen them say, hey, look, guys, this is still being litigated in the courts. So we're not prepared to take an official stance yet. However, we are continuing to investigate. We are continuing to test, guns that have malfunctioned and been sent back to us. We think we have identified a problem. We think we have isolated it, like you said, to this certain set of serial numbers, or guns that were produced prior to 2019. Or, everybody knows that, like, there's not a Sig Sauer factory like the Model T Ford factory where every single part is made in-house and built on an assembly line. A factory over here makes the striker, and a factory over here makes all the springs, and a factory over here machines the slide, and a factory over here does the injection molding for the grip and all that. So if they could even come out and say, hey, this one part that is made in this one factory had some QC issues between the years 2016 and mid 2019. And like, I mean, just something, but for if nothing else, again, based on the assumption that my personal gun would be fine forever, I'm going to feel like a dummy for carrying it.
Yeah. And that's the part that I'm going to just say it. That's the part that upsets me the most about it. And I am upset by it because, like I said, and like you said, you've invested money into it. I've invested money into it.
I got 0 of these guns for free.
Right. We talked about SIG last year on the podcast and where they were going and, how we both felt about them. And, now I have to take a different stance. I'm not going to champion for them and root for them and just say, hey, listen, you guys need to fix what you're doing. You need to fix your stance on this. You need to change your posture and really look into this. I 1000% feel like if SIG as a brand, as a company, went out there and made that statement, hey, listen, there obviously have been issues. We're addressing what that is, and we're going to pledge to make it right and fix it. They would have been met with open arms. You'd still have your haters.
I believe so. I believe that's correct.
Yeah, you'd still have your anti-SIG boys, just like there's anti-Glock boys. You're gonna always have that. And if they're anti-SIG, it's because they're Glock boys and they love the Glock. So it is what it is. You're not going to get a New York Giants fan to love the Philadelphia Eagles. It doesn't matter. You're not going to get somebody who loves a Glock to make a change. But it would have been respected and it would have been the honorable thing to do. And you would have had people being your champion for that. But the guys like you and me, that 80% that you were talking about in the middle, were kind of shifting to that side of, oh God, I don't want to do this. Now, will I go back and carry and shoot my macro? Probably.
So I don't own a 365. I own older SIGs and I own these 3 P320s. So, and like, that's the the man in the mirror looking back at me like, will I go back to these guns? And if so, how long? And if so, am I going to wait for a better answer to come out of SIG? And if that answer never comes, are these 3 guns just going to be wall hangers at that point? Like, I really don't know. And I'm going to do something I really hate to do and reference a movie, but in Fight Club, this is one of the things that the narrator talks about in Fight Club, because in Fight Club, the narrator's job, he works for an insurance company, and it's his job to go out whenever a car crashes or catches on fire or whatever. It's his job to assess the exposure and the liability of the company and determine, is a settlement or a recall, which one of those two things is the more financially beneficial route. And with 2.5 million SIG pistols out there, let me see if because this is one of the things I love about the SIG pistol, is how quick it is to take apart. So let me see if I can get this apart while I'm talking about it. Boom, I just did. Come on, there we go. Boom, got it. So a lot of people and I don't know if it's because people that just don't know what they're talking about this is the fire control unit.
Yeah.
If whatever this problem is, if it lies in the fire control unit or if it lies in the striker mechanism, but with the little bit that I know about manufacturing and the little bit that I know about the cost of manufacturing firearms, I would venture to guess that it probably costs somewhere around $25 to manufacture these parts that make up the fire control unit. I don't know that to be true in any way, shape, or form. That's just a guess. But with 2.5 million P320 pistols out there, if that's a $25 mistake and they were going to replace every fire control unit in every P320 out there to remedy this problem, that's a $63 million bath that SIG has to take. And so that really makes the conspiracy part of my brain think that like all of this is just gaslighting in order for them to avoid having to admit to a $63 million mistake.
I mean, sure, but we just talked about two lawsuits that total almost 15 million, well, 13.5 million, right? And there, from the last time I saw, I think there was 7 lawsuits that were still kind of pending, but there are obviously a lot more SIGs out there, and you don't know if you're going to see more of them. I think they are quickly going to get into that $60 million price range that you were talking about.
Well, and if that's off the top of my head, and I think that's a best case scenario. So
sure,
yes, that is a completely made up figure. Just for clarity.
I mean, if we were going by that theory, to me, it makes more sense for them to admit there's a problem, on your knees with your hands up, begging the industry to forgive your social media stance for the last month and fix the problem. Like,
well, so the other thing you and I talked about this on the phone the other day too. You and I both know, like, I shoot about 10,000 rounds of ammunition a year. And if there was a pie chart of all shooters and all gun owners in America, the slice of the pie of people that shoots 10,000 or more rounds per year is a very teeny tiny little sliver of the pie. And I think SIG knows that too. I think that, like, there are, I'm not talking shit about my dad, but my dad, because I loved my SIG M17 so much, and because I said so many good things about it, my dad went out and bought himself an M18, and to my knowledge has never fired it once. And I think there's a lot of people out there like that. So I mean, I'm sure that factors into SIG's math as well.
Probably. You're probably wrong, or you're probably not wrong. At the end of the day, guys, this is, I wanted to make this show happen today, and this one will probably air soon after. So we're recording this, like I said, on March 20th, 3/20. So it felt right to do it today. It'll probably air a week after we recorded this because it is still kind of fresh. I'm sure if SIG continues on their social media trending, it'll be fresh for a very, very long time. I hope that somebody over there makes some logical decisions going forward. I would love to hear your thoughts and your concerns in the comments, whether you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple. You can send some comments over that way, or if you're going to wait for the video, we would definitely want to hear some of your comments about either your experience or your thoughts on the SIG P320. But that's about all.
Specifically, I would like to hear if to our listeners, A, do you have a P320, and B, if so, do you intend to keep carrying it or not?
Good.
That's what I'm curious about, because I have not settled on that answer for myself yet, so I would be interested to hear what other people think.
Yeah, that is a good question. I want you guys to definitely let us know. But all right, guys, until next time, Jamie.
That's all I got. It's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart.
All right, guys. Until then, we'll talk to you soon. You stay safe, stay prepared. ZP002